Hey folks, welcome to another video on my channel, and today we're actually looking at a watch that has been with me for 1.5 years now. Just to make the intro short, this is a modified Seiko SKX 007, as you can tell from the title, and this is what I want to talk about today. So I just want to start the whole video with this little EDC shot here, just because this is one of my videos in this series that I came up with about 1.5 years ago, a little bit longer than that, which was called the Woodsmans Mindset, or the Urban Woodsman series. What it basically was about was the stuff that I'm carrying in my daily life in an urban scenario, and why I'm carrying it, and how this whole woodsman, bushcrafty kind of mindset is actually playing into an urban environment. So I just gonna get rid of all this stuff here, and then we're just gonna get into this watch. Okay folks, here we go. If you know my older series, the Urban Woodsman series, you probably know that my wristwatches, I want them to tick certain boxes, just as all my other gear that I'm wearing every day. So basically what I like my stuff to do is not give in before I do, which is a really random kind of guideline to go with, but I just like sturdy watches. As a little bit of a gear junkie, not too bad, but a little bit. I actually really like watches that are 200 meter water resistant or have are ISO certified divers, which is maybe a little bit of overkill for what I'm doing, but from my experience, whatever is 100 meter, 10 ATM, whatever it is just not cutting it for me. I've had watches for years that were 10 ATM and they didn't have a screw down crown, and they just would always get draw some moisture, and I would have them more at the dealer than on my wrist. So another thing that I want to actually introduce you to today is my new camera equipment. Yay! If you know my older videos from 1.5 years ago that were shot with a GoPro without a microphone, all of that kind of stuff, and then with a DSLR in between that was not exactly good at focusing, autofocusing while doing video. And so here, a couple of grand later, we're actually having a completely new camera that I bought yesterday, and when we're focusing now, as long as we're not going under the minimal focusing distance of this lens. But I'm really stoked now, folks. So about the watch, this is a Seiko SKX 007. I bought this in Japan about early autumn or late summer, you could say, 2015, and I'm back in Japan now, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk a little bit about this watch. And I just love this knife. Sorry folks, my GC Ben Hogan number 65. Got a video about this guy as well. It's been in my pocket ever since I bought it. Not a day without it. Okay, sorry folks, just a little bit of an intermezzo. Okay, the Seiko SKX 007, I bought it in Japan from a Japanese dealer, Rakuten.jp, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to give you a little bit of an update. The Seiko SKX 007 has been more often reviewed than pretty much any other watch out there. There has been more talked about it than about any other watch out there. It is a no-frills, do-it-all, extremely reliable watch with a very decent movement inside. The specs are all just, great in a way. They're decent. I'm not a horologist, and I just want to do a little bit of a disclaimer right now and right here. I know that the horologist and watch community is very, very precise, and they know a lot about history, about brands, about who took what from whom, and there's a lot of discussions going on in videos and stuff all the time. This here is not supposed to be a video where I want to tell you folks what's up with this watch, with the history of this watch, with what it can do and what it cannot do. This is a video about me telling you what I did to this watch, and I hope you just have fun with it. So, sorry about that little autofocusing thingy here. I still figure a couple of things with this camera out. Anyways, yeah, where was I? The Seiko SKX 007 is an amazing watch. I have done more bad things to this watch than I actually want to admit. Ever since I received it in Japan here, I have done several mods to it, and I've really beaten this watch in a way up. In a way that you wouldn't probably expect. So if you're interested in that story, just bear with me, folks. When I got this watch, there was a couple of things, design elements, that I just didn't like about the Seikos. Seiko watches are one of my favorite brands, and I'm just a really big fan of, in general, Japanese quality. I train a lot in Japan. I'm using Japanese swords in my training here and overseas. I'm training jiu-jitsu here. I use a lot of Japanese tools in my work as a craftsman, may it be leatherwork, may it be making knives or carving spoons and bowls. There's been Japanese quality in my life for a very long time, and I've been very fortunate with that. However, when it comes to design, just about the Seikos, there is a couple of things that I just didn't like too much about them, which was, for example, the hands, or I didn't really like the feel of the bezel. So after carrying the watch a little bit off and on, together with the Excalibur by Citizen, which is a ProMaster diver by them, which I don't like for a couple of reasons and really like for a couple other reasons, which you can actually tell from my video about it. I have a small G-Shock that I really like, and I have a Vostok Amphibia that I really like. But ever since I have this watch, and especially after the modification to it, I've been wearing this watch all the time. So apart from this, apart from these slight design elements, what I'm not the biggest fan of is the rubber strap. Although there's nothing wrong with it, I think it's a great rubber strap. If you would just wear the rubber strap, if I say rubber strap one more time, folks, if you wear the strap that it comes with for a while, I'm sure that it really is going to be very comfortable. You can also update it or upgrade it rather to one of these infamous Italian rubber straps, and so on and so forth. However, I always was a very big fan of NATO and Solo straps, just because of their history and because of the bare features that they give me. I've done some from leather myself in my leather crafting endeavors, but in general I really like the nylon straps, just because they don't start smelling, and they're extremely resistant against wear, especially when they get wet and dry again, and are just exposed to maybe very dry weather as well over time. You have to keep caring for leather, which is what I'm really fine with and really happy with when it comes to my shoes and my leather belts and my sheaths for my knives, of course, and everything. But just in this case here, I really like nylon for a change. In general, I'm a very big fan of the Solo straps because there's not much you have to do carrying them. It's just a single strap that just folds, like rather inserts through the lugs and the pins underneath the watch and comes out the other side, and it's pretty impossible to lose your watch by one of the pins breaking, which was, as I understand, the original reason for coming up with these kind of straps for the military, as well as the over length of these straps that just make it possible. Can you please focus? People on YouTube always do this. Seems to work. As well as being just a little bit oversized, so when you wear a wetsuit, it's easier to tie them over. Okay, that's just another quick intermezzo. So yeah, this is just an area of Solo straps and NATO straps that I've been using. The NATO, as far as I understand, I think it comes down as well to the buckle. I think a NATO strap rather usually has these a little bit finer buckles and is from a little bit thinner nylon material. This is what I've found on what was declared as a NATO strap. The Solo straps seem to have thicker nylon material in general, which I like very much, I have to say. Let's zoom out a little bit, folks. I hope this is a better video experience so far, and this little fortune I invested in the camera is paying off. So what did I have in mind when I started to modify this watch? One of my favorite dive watches out there, and again, I want to continue this disclaimer, I'm not saying I know a lot about watches history, or who was first with what design, who's an homage of what other watch. All these things don't really play a very big role for me, because I like good handmade gear that have some history to them, and I think we all agree that not only this watch, but also the watch that I'm talking about next, have a lot of experience in history, and yeah, there's just nothing I want to discuss about that. I'm not the person to have an opinion here, I think. I really like Squale watches, and I pronounce it Squale because it's I'm Austrian. I grew up 30 minutes away from the Italian border, and as far as the spelling goes, for me it's Squale. But again, I'm not here to discuss about that. It's just my opinion about this, the pronunciation of the watch, and I think that's just not a biggie here. But what I want to talk about is that I really like the aesthetics of the Squale, especially the 50 Atmos, the black and the blue version of this 1521, I think is the model number, and I really like that. So with the Seiko being, I guess, somehow comparable in the shape of the case, and how the crown is designed and everything, and that's just my personal aesthetical kind of opinion. I think this watch kind of lent itself pretty well to just doing a little bit of a you know, kind of a design towards the Squale when I do the modification. So I waited quite a long time to find a good bezel for that, and it seemed a little bit difficult to find a coin edge bezel that actually has the 120 clicks, and I really liked that more than the 60 clicks. So there were options out there without clicks and 60 clicks and whatnot, but not exactly the coin edge that I had imagined. Please, can you focus on this watch camera? Thank you. So not exactly the coin edge that I had imagined with the 120 clicks. So I finally found it on eBay, and I don't think that the ad is still up, but if I find it, I put it in the description box, of course, as well as a couple of other things that I'm using, like this camera equipment here, which is, by the way, a Canon 80D with a Rode microphone and a new Nano USM lens, etc., etc. So if if you're searching yourself for some of this gear, it's just a little bit easier for you to find it. And as you know, I'm trying to put up a lot of videos, so I also do an Amazon affiliation that doesn't cost you anything extra, but anyways, plug over. Okay, so we have the coin edge bezel, and I was really happy how it felt compared to the OEM bezel, especially when it got wet. And I spent a lot of time in Canada, where I lived for a year, in the canoe, in the workshop, in the woods, and this watch was constantly wet, submerged, or whatever. And it just proved again that I really like having these 200 meter dive watches on me, and I include all of the Sunto, all of the G-Shocks, all of those watches in that as well. So this watch really felt better, or like this bezel rather, felt really better being wet than the OEM bezel. There's just a little bit more friction to it, and again, this is just also an aesthetical thing that really comes close to the Squale. So after that, and I think I actually got me the insert at the same time as the bezel, I just changed the insert as well, and I gotta say, and I gotta zoom in here a little bit, I think you can tell that the bezel insert, which is the regular painted aluminum, I think, got a little bit beat up. And maybe this is as well, sorry for the fingerprints, folks, I think this is also a good moment to talk about the wear and tear of the watch itself and the hard legs, just because we're having the detail shot here. The hard legs is really not bad, I gotta tell you, folks. This watch has gone through a lot. I'm just gonna wipe this off after I touched the glass. I don't think we have to talk about the legibility and visibility of this watch. The lume, after the short time that I have it, which is 1.5 years short, I think, for this kind of watch, is amazing. The lume is just so much fun. I love the ring on the inside with the second markers or the minute markers. It just gives a lot of depth to this watch, as well as the chamfered edge of the hard legs. And the interesting thing about the dial itself is that although I wanted to do a little bit of a Squale inspired design, I didn't have to do anything to the dial because the dials are very, very similar in my opinion. They have round markers with the loom attached to it, and just in general a rather classic dial. Both have some designs or rather written information down here. I think Squale has the logo down here, and Seiko has, of course, up here the Seiko logo and the automatic. And even if the Squale dial would have been very, very different from this one, I don't think I would have changed it, because even more than the Squale, this dial I think is my favorite dial of all dials out there on the market. And I just, you know, I'm lucky that it's also on a really affordable watch. Okay, let's keep going. I think the Hardlex wore pretty well for what I, you know, have gone through with this watch. 1 week canoe tours through the north of Ontario, daily work in the shop. Sometimes I was wearing this watch while grinding knives, folks. So I think given that, I can say from my memory how often I bumped with the glass against something that was from steel or concrete. I think the wear is really good. And I rather take a couple of scratches on this Hardlex glass with a little bit more flexibility, as I understand it, than having no scratches on a sapphire crystal and then just having to replace the whole crystal because I just smashed the watch into table of my bandsaw or something. And what I put this watch through, I don't think a sapphire glass would have taken it, but that's just my personal opinion. Cool. Okay, that about the wear and tear of the glass. What else did I do to the watch? As you can tell, I changed the hands as well, and this is probably, together with the coinage bezel, the major thing that made it for me a little bit of a Squale design. The Squale hands are square. I really like a colored bright, and in my case it's really always orange, minute hand. I really like them. I think it makes them quicker, legible, and the design in general is just more interesting for me on the black background. So I found at the Gas watches, I found a set of hands after searching for quite a long time and waiting for these to come in. I found a set of hands that had a great loom, the square type appearance of the Squale, and since I wasn't really a big fan of the second hand on the Squale, which has the little square with the little needle end, I went with this type of second hand that has loom attached to it. And as far as I remember, I think this is the type of hand, second hand, that's on the Sumo, but please don't quote me on that. And I think it was also on an older version of this watch, which was the 6105. I don't even know anymore, but it's definitely historically Seiko inspired as far as I understand. So I'm really happy with these Degas hands. They have performed well. The loom is awesome. What can I say? The price you pay, I think, is really fair. So I think in general, what we can see is just that compared to Squale watch, there's quite a few design elements that are similar now, and I'm really happy with it. Ever since this modification is over, I'm really wearing this watch every single day if I can, you know. Now to a different part about this review that also kind of like plays into the wear and tear. I had this watch at the watch repair guy or wherever, like a watch shop, quite a few times, and it was my fault every single time. So the watches, these kind of affordable dive watches with this, what is it, it's like 726S whatever movement, 7S26 I think the movement is. It is a very reliable movement. It is decent. I think people find it pretty good. Is it the most accurate automatic movement, or are automatic watches in general the most accurate and consumer friendly and how can I say, like maintenance free. I think people would agree with me that they're not, without trying to start a huge conversation here. However, when I got the watch, it was quite accurate. But I was wearing this watch one day, working on the lathe, turning bolts, and it was literally whacked out of whack. It was hit by the chuck at like 3000 RPM or something like that, without even me really realizing that it hit the watch, but it was just seriously 10 minutes off a day. And I needed to bring it to the watch repair guy in Canada still, and he tried to get it back in tune. And at the same time, I think he also installed some of my my new parts. So afterwards, the watch never really, performed that well again for me. As far as accuracy, I was always 1-2 minutes off a day. But before you just click yourself out of this video being disappointed, the watch had some trouble afterwards, partially maybe due to the guy who repaired it and installed my my parts, and something started rattling inside and it would just stop all the time. So when I was back in Austria, I brought it to a very good watch dealer, and he repaired the watch for me for really little money, which was really cool. And I gotta tell you folks, ever since that, when I haven't worn the watch for about 2 days or something, and it stops, or 3 days it rather takes, it always takes the watch 1 or 2 days afterwards to fully catch up again. But I have checked this watch for the last 2 weeks, wearing it every single day, and I think changed the time, or like accurately changed the time to atomic time with all the watches I have here in Canada. In Japan, sorry, as well as on my phone. And for the last 2 weeks, this watch hasn't been more than, I don't know, a few seconds off. I haven't, tuned it ever since that, and it has just held time perfectly for at least the last 2 weeks. And I think after all of the repairs and due to my own fault, and the mods I did and everything to it, I'm really impressed, because the only downside to this watch was a little bit that it wasn't holding time perfectly accurate out of the box. But after having it adjusted and repaired after about 1.5 years, which might be a good idea if you have a watch like this, that after a while you just bring it to a watch guy and he just tunes it a little bit for you, I think then you can get a pretty much perfect accuracy even out of a movement like this workhorse movement by Seiko. And with these words, I actually would like to finish this review. I've talked way more than I actually wanted to. I'm really glad I can bring you folks a little bit better video quality now. I can only say that I love this watch. I hope you had a good time following me basically along with how as I explained the different mods to it, and maybe it gave you a little bit motivation to do something to your Seiko. If you're looking for a watch that has been worn by a lot of people in the past who really appreciated a good watch, a watch that is in every single collection I guess out there of people who are into tool diving watches, military watches whatsoever, if you want to have a watch that you can go canoeing with, diving with, that you can wear every day off and on, and that is never out of style, but you don't have a budget to spend $500-600, maybe $1,000-2,000 on a watch, get yourself a classic. Get yourself an SKX 007. I think it's a great deal, and this is a watch you can probably hand down eventually. Now, just for anybody out there who is wondering if after all the time I spent into this watch and all the money on the modding parts and on the modding itself, if I shouldn't have just gotten me a Squale 50 Atmos, I would just return. No, I don't think so. I like having a Seiko. I like the Seiko. I don't want to have a Squale per se. I'm happy with the Seiko. I've spent 3 years about in Japan over the last 8 years. I'm proud of the Seiko. As far as money goes, I have probably about $300 with all the repairs as well in this watch by now. I bought it in Japan for a very good deal, about $150. And then I added about 150 give or take in modding parts, maybe a little bit less, maybe around 120, plus some repairs and installments. So I think it's a pretty good deal, although it's a modded watch. So that just, if anybody out there feels like I should have gotten me for that money a Squale in the first place. Well, this is me from Woodsman's Finest. Thank you for tuning in today, folks. Thank you very much for continuing to tune in and bearing with me as I'm trying to get a little bit better at this. My website is up now with all my products, my knives, my leather gear, the spoons and bowls that I'm carving, and there's constantly I'm constantly adding more products to the page. It's woodsmansfinest.com. Thank you very much for watching and the support wherever you are, folks. I hope you're safe. I'm gonna see you next time. Cheers.